Alright, hello to anyone who might end up watching this. I can't imagine it will be too many people, but I guess my name is Julian. I was a player of Kaijudo up from when it started to when it ended, and recently I sort of got back into the game. I've been building a bunch of decks, playing a little bit here and there with my brother, and I was looking to see if anyone else was making any content, any deck profiles, anything like that, and couldn't really find anything, unfortunately, so I decided, why not give it a shot, put some of my own decks out there, maybe see if anyone still wants to engage with the game or anything like that. So I figured what better way to start than with what I consider, and maybe a lot of people would consider, the best deck in the game. Maybe at least the one of the most well-rounded decks, certainly, and that would be LWF Dragons. It's a deck I have some attachment to. I played it in the Open to top 8, that event, and ever since then I've kind of had a place in my heart for this deck. So um, bear with me on the quality of this video. I know it's not going to be too great, but I just want to get something out there, see if just have a lot of pent up Kaijudo energy, so I want to transfer it into something. So let's jump right into it. Starting off the deck, you have the obvious support cards, Lux and Nyx. I mean, just any cheap creature that basically generates mana, lets you ramp out other creatures, is going to be insane, and the fact that they can just attack and do the same amount of damage as any other early creature is awesome too. So in certain matchups you can just play them as cheap creatures, like 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and get in there if you need to, if that's what the matchup needs. So they're just versatile cards, super powerful cards. Make the deck work. Following that up, you have Herald of Infernus. One of the big incentives to play this deck, just I mean, it's an impressive warping card. Certainly one of the most powerful cards in the game. Just being able to punish your opponent for just playing certain cards in their deck. Just, they have to respect it. They have to play their deck a certain way or a different way than they would intend to. They have to, the whole metagame has to adapt to this card being present. So it's pretty powerful. Moving on from that, we have Hyperspeed, which just functions as another cheap dragon that you can follow up a bird with, specifically Nyx. Just being able to go 3-drop into a 4-drop that generates a card back is really important. Hyperspeed's kind of replaceable. I've thought about playing like Twin Cannon Maelstrom, which I think can be powerful. Just giving Herald Power Attack 2000 can be relevant. But Hyperspeed comes up a fair amount too, just giving you some extra reach. It can be relevant, especially against the control decks. Just being able to Herald into Hyperspeed sometimes, that can be cool to put on some pressure. So it has its niche cases, just like Twin Cannon. I think they're both kind of going to function primarily as just mountains, but they have a slot in the deck, so you can't go too wrong with playing either. Next up is Lyra. Lyra is, I think, one of the best cards in the game. I think, Bottle aside, which is a whole other can of worms, it's definitely the most broken card. On a purely powerful level aspect, it's kind of hard to determine what Bottle is, but that card aside, I think Lyra, Andromeda, and Finbar are certainly the 3 best cards in the game, and I think Lyra has a case just how good it is in almost any kind of deck. Just if you're playing a tempo deck or any kind of attacking deck, it can be a super powerful top-end card alongside Finbar. And if you're playing a control deck, it will be just an insane mid-range card to just dominate the battlefield, coming down on 6, shutting down evolutions, shutting down whatever their biggest threat is, being able to almost remove it from play for a turn, and then it's also just like a 6k beater that sits on the board. Like, it's just a huge tempo swing whenever you play Lyra. And a big reason you can play Andromeda is because you have Lyra bridging the gap up to that 9 mana. So Lyra just being an insane card. And of course, in this deck specifically, just being able to play it on 5 mana because you have a bird, being able to curve Herald into Lyra. I mean, it's a curve as old as Dragon Strike itself, so certainly one of the most powerful curves in the game, and Lyra's a big reason this deck is as good as it is, and Light is as good of a civilization as it is. Next up, we'll have General Skycrusher. One of the most important cards in this deck, actually, especially as the deck moves more towards these kind of mid-range evolutions. General Skycrusher gives you a great answer to those with Herald. So a lot of the ways people will play against this deck is if they're playing kind of a weenie deck that evolves into evolutions. Like let's take Mono Nature midrange is a good example. Like when they have to play against you, they're gonna have to play the role of the aggressor, or as the aggressor most of the time, because they have to sort of get under you before you get to your dragons, because you have so much top end and Andromeda included. They have to go under you in some respect. So because of that, they're gonna have to, basically their game plan is to just put out a few small creatures and then swallow those up off their board by evolving onto them, so that you can't herald those small creatures. But what ends up happening is, like, let's say they're beating you down with a charging Great Claw, just like a 6k. If you can play Sky Crusher, then all of a sudden your herald beats over that and invalidates the way they're trying to. It's basically the counterplay to their counterplay. So similar things can be said for some like the tempo water decks, where they try to evolve into a Neuron, or they try to evolve into, I mean, like, I don't know what exactly would see play, like Emperor Axon, I guess, or Dendrite, any of these cards. Like if they're trying to sit behind these bigger evolution creatures that can't get attacked by Herald, you just play Sky Crusher and it blows the doors off that strategy. It's also just like, I mean, it kills a 3k when it enters. It's just a big dragon, so you could make an argument for playing 3 just because of how important it can be in certain matchups. I think 2 has always been stock, but I could certainly see an argument for more. Carrying on, we have I guess like the big dragons. Let's go with those. We have triple Andromeda. Certainly one of the big incentives to play this deck. It's going to be the best thing to drop off Herald a lot of the time. Just a huge dragon. Almost just like instantly wins you the matchup versus any kind of attacking deck. It's just insane. Certainly, again, one of the best cards in the game. Just the way that it almost invalidates your opponent's strategy entirely when they're trying to attack you. You just drop it, get back shields. They're gonna have to break those, give you more cards. It's also just huge. The fact that it's just like a walking terror pit is insane too, because if they have to get under you still, they're gonna have to break some shields some more. They're gonna be putting their cards sideways, trying to get in through under Awe Strike, and then just the fact that it's 11,500 power means it kills whatever is attacking you. So that's insane too. Like if they wanted to balance this card, I know Awe Strike's amazing, but I think they should have made it less power. Like just as big as it is, just it's kind of egregious. And then the other big dragon to go alongside Andromeda is Infernus the Awakened. Now my 5 dragons, typically you'll see 5 big dragons. Usually there's a Cassiopeia, but I've decided to opt for a second Infernus. I think the main reason there is it's another mountain, but aside from that, I think it's still a powerful card. I think Cassiopeia is a little bit better specifically against like the control decks, but Infernus Awakened's still good there, and it's pretty much I would say it's better against pretty much every other deck. Being able to lock out a lot of decks is really important. Like it's another huge stabilizing card. Like sure, it's not going to get you the shields versus rush, but if you have a couple shields left, Andromeda, they're basically resorting to just like Gila Flaming you or something for the rest of the game, and then you can easily race that with an Awakened anyways. So because of that, and then as well against a lot of the evolution based decks, again, like if you can get this out against Modern Nature, all of a sudden they can't evolve anymore. Like they can't play any more evolutions because they can't play the bait for them. So locking out of evolutions is super powerful as well. And oh yeah, another thing too is with a lot of decks, this isn't something we really had to experience with, because Shield Blast creatures, that's a huge wrinkle with Infernus the Awakened. Like we didn't have to deal with that when Infernus was in Standard, but once it rotated out, they gave us all these Shield Blast creatures. So now being able to shut those down, you don't have to worry about Arbiters and Shields or Sumo Artichokes or whatever it may be. Like you don't have to worry about a lot of their defenses sometimes, because it just locks out those cards from being played. So I think that's another thing that gives this card merit. So that's Awakened. Moving on, some of the non-dragons, I guess we'll start with. We have Psychic Predator Rusalka. It's a fine 4-drop. The main reason it is in here is it's a hedge against some of the, again, those Evo decks that can give you trouble. Like specifically, I think Anjak could be a big problem for this deck. So being able to use Psychic Predator Rusalka as a way to answer Anjak, and then if you need to, you can race, get aggressive, chip in for some shields with Rusalka and keep those Evos locked down. It answers some of the problematic cards. Aqua Chaser is certainly a card you like to play, you could play, and I've liked to play it a lot in the past. But as it stands, I'm gonna sit with just the Rusalka alone, or the Predator. Carrying on with some more 4-drops, we have Keeper of Laws. I mean, obviously, just being able to curve any of your birds into Keeper against control is a huge part of your plan. Like just trying to go bird into Keeper and then start getting aggressive and then curving out into like Lyras or more Heralds or whatever it may be. Just trying to curve out against control is a big plan, and Keeper's the pivotal 4-drop for that game plan. I know historically I've always liked to play 3 in this deck and just hedge my bets against control, but for this build specifically, I'm playing some other techs in place of some cards and that are more for dealing with the attacking decks like Rush. So I've ended up cutting down on the number of Keeper of Laws, and Aqua Chaser is a card I'd love to play as well, but I've kind of cut those as well. So those are some of the 4-drops, and then General Finbar. Just an insane top end. Like for any of those control curves that you want to do, General Finbar is the amazing top end. Just being able to shut whatever kind of defenses they're trying to generate, shut those down with the bounce ability, and then just let you recoup any advantage from going in. All of a sudden your birds are generating you pluses, all your creatures are generating pluses when they're going in. It's definitely up there again as one of the best cards in the game. And that's one of the things that makes this deck so powerful is you're just playing all the best cards like Herald, Andromeda, Lyra, Finbar, Keeper of Laws. Those are certainly all in the top 10, and a lot of them in the top 5 for sure of cards in the game. So you might as well just throw them all in a deck and you're going to have success. So Finbar, I could hear arguments for playing 2. I know I've played 2 occasionally in the past. I think if you want to cut your curve a little lower, it might be one of the cards you move to, just because again, if you're focusing on the Dragon engine, Finbar can be one of the cards you cut to lower the curve, especially because it can't be made cheaper by the birds. But again, at the same time, Finbar is the best dragon, right? Like that's what people have said in the past. If it's the best card in the game, you should just play 3. Like you can put it in your mana zone if it's not going to be relevant, and when it is going to be relevant, it's going to be game breaking. So just jam 3 of it, and again, it's just a water mana too. So worst case, like it's still just on an island. So for now I have 3, and I guess from here on out we'll be moving a little bit more to like the defensive side of the deck. We have Warchief Kyo. This is a card that I think is definitely a hedge again towards the fire civilization, just making sure I have more mountains. It's probably overall like it's definitely just like a weaker card than the Arbiter, but again, being a fire card, and it has some more synergy with the deck itself, just being a card that can curve off of Herald, functioning as another tap card, that can be relevant. Being able to follow up a Lyra with Warchief Kyo, it's just a lot more castable than some of the other cards, and it's the best. If you're going to play a Shield Blast in red, it's probably the best one, at least for this deck. Another thing too is like sometimes against some of the really aggressive decks, you might play a Herald, but it might be too late, right? Like you're playing it onto a board where you've curved into Herald, but you're already facing lethal next turn. Well, if you have a Warchief Kyo and Shield, it almost acts like it's given the Herald haste in that sense. So that can be a way to cheese out some games. So that's Warchief Kyo. Next up, we'll go to more of the spells. We have Jump Jets. Just an important card for a card that a lot of the attacking decks again have to respect, the Jump Jets, and it's a card again like I know I didn't play it at the open. Like I think I played like 3 Awakened and a bunch of Rusalka Aqua Chasers instead, and my deck wasn't super well built. I kind of took that list just from, it was literally just what I'd been playing at my locals at the time against the one dude I played with who just loved to jam like Almighty Colossus with his like Voxes and his Steam Tank Cryons and his Wild Strider Ramnos and all that garbage. So I would literally just fill my deck with Rusalkas and bounce everything he played and just destroy him. So, and he was never attacking my shield, so I just never played Jump Jets. And then when I went into that big tournament, I just didn't have them. So if you were playing any big tournament or if you're playing any kind of wide metagame, you probably want to play Jump Jets. It's worst case again, it's like a red mana, so, and it's just a powerful card. And carrying on, we have Stormspark Blast. Again, I'm not playing the Arbiter. I kind of have always favored Stormspark Blast, just being able to be a little more castable at 6 mana. Being an answer to hexproof creatures can be pretty important too. Just to, like, I remember at the Open, I think it was Richard Yan actually played against him, and he played, sorry to name drop him, but I think he played a Keeper of Laws and then immediately realized his mistake when I followed it up by just Stormspark blasting him and dropping an Andromeda off of a Herald, so that was a nice free win. Anyways, Stormspark Blast I just liked. Again, like, it answers the hexproof cards. It's a lot more castable on curve than Arbiter. It can be like a lot of the time it's just going to be a light mana, and it can be lend itself to, I guess, results oriented thinking, and like when you remember the games where you just have Stormspark as your last shield and it blows your opponent out, and then it feels like the only card that can win those games, but a lot of the time it's just a dud in shields, so it's not the best shield blast overall, but I've always favored the card. I feel like it's a little bit better against some of the control decks, so I've hedged a little more in that direction with that pick over the Arbiter. Next up, Bottle of Wishes. Bottle, of course, I mean, not much to say about this card again. The only card that's had to be restricted in the game, and for good reason, of course. If you're going to play it in any deck, it's certainly going to be Dragons, where you want the water mana, and you just got so much big stuff to cheat out. It's kind of dirty. I think when I was playing at that open all those years ago, I think I had 2 bottles blasted the whole tournament, and both of them hit Infernacy Awaken, so it was like 2 free games that way, so which is just part of the reason I top 8 it, obviously. Actually, one of them was in top 8. Anyways, Piercing Judgment. Piercing Judgment is another one. It might be up there in like the top 15, 20 cards of the game, probably. Certainly, arguably the best multi-civ, I think. It's just been a great card since it came out. Just being able to be a cheap card that lets you play to the board. I know I don't have Aqua Strider, which is a good card to play with it, but again, with Herald, it just gives you another tap card, and being able to fight against hexproof creatures with it too. Just being able to bounce or one thing, tap a Keeper, and attack over it with Law or Infernus. It can be good. It's just a great shield blast too. Just a super castable shield blast, which is really important. And yeah, that's Piercing. Not much to say. I think it's pretty good. Rounding out the deck, I think 4 more cards we have. Triple Oathsworn Call. Now, I pretty much ripped this right from Rob Walensky's top 8 deck from the Open. It's never been a card I've played with, to be honest. Like, I think throughout Kaijudo's lifespan, I just didn't play against a lot of the decks Oathsworn would be good against, and I didn't personally play any of the decks that it was good in, which was sort of a two-way problem, I guess. I just felt like, yeah, in Kaijudo, people, myself included, like I was part of the problem. We just loved to play like decks that were just piles and piles of cards, just huge 100-card piles of cards. And because of that, like I just didn't have much experience with Oathsworn Call. So I decided I'd give it a shot. I was hesitant at first as to how good it would be. Like I felt like in a lot of the matchups you want it for, you're really relying on curving out anyways, and playing another kind of multi-civ that doesn't unlock 2 colors can be pretty detrimental to your curves, and making sure, like if this was something else, it would unlock, like if it was Strider, for example, it would unlock 2 colors, and then you can properly curve out maybe your birds into a dragon, or I don't know. Like, it just felt like this card might be detrimental and not worth like the some percent chance, like the 33% chances in shields. It's not worth like however many times it screws you over by casting it, but at the same time, I don't have that many multis. I only have the 6, so it's not going to be a huge problem there. And once I played with the card, I was like, holy crap, this is an insane shield blast. Like, basically, it just makes it so that like that 33% of the games you do have it, you're almost certain to win. Like if you're playing against Rush, which again is one of the really hard matchups for this deck, Oathsworn Call, it almost gets you like a free win per match in that sense. Like it gives you a free win per match against Rush, which is huge. And compared to Strider, and the reason I'm comparing it to Strider is because basically by playing 3 Oathsworn Call, I've decided to tech my deck against the aggressive attacking decks, which is why like if I wasn't playing Oathsworn Call, I would just be playing like more Keeper of Laws, maybe find room for Cyber Scamps or like more Aqua Chasers, something along those lines, right? Like if I wanted to tech my deck against the control decks, I would play other cards. The fact that I'm playing Oathsworn Call means I want to tech it against the attacking decks, and at that point you have to choose: do I play like Aqua Strider, which has been the traditional go-to, or do I play Oathsworn Call? And in my experience, like Aqua Strider was never a good card. Like it is a multi-civ. For a lot of other matchups, being a water mana can be important, so it's just a fine like throw down turn one. But I just felt like Aqua Strider, even in the matchups you do want it against, like against the rush decks, it's barely a speed bump. Like those like the mono red rush deck, they're gonna have Comet Missile, they're gonna have Reckless Conflagration, they're going to have whatever that new red spell from Vortex is that makes them sack a blocker. Like they have so many outs to it. Like even just you play a Strider on the play into their Blaze Belcher, they just evolve a Torhelm onto it, and then they eat up your Strider, and now they have this giant 5k that's really good against you too. Like Strider just felt inconsequential a lot of the time. Like it just doesn't meaningfully add to your win percentage. It just doesn't convert to wins for you. So I just felt like the card was kind of pointless to play. So I just kind of erred on the side of like I'm just never gonna play Strider in this deck. Period. The one matchup, like you could argue Strider might be a little bit better against like than Oathsworn Call, maybe against like something like Mega Bugs, I guess, like maybe a deck where you really want Strider for piercing to as that kind of curve. But even then, I would just say like Oathsworn Call is probably going to be better over the most matchups. Like it's going to be much better across the multiple matchups that it warrants a slot. So I would never play Strider in this deck. I would just play Oathsworn if I wanted something for that purpose. Like I guess like a good way to prove that as well would be like Mono Nature midrange. Like Strider would be pretty much inconsequential in that matchup. Like it might get you a chump block on an Evo here and there, but it's just not going to be good. Whereas Oathsworn Call, when I was testing that matchup, Oathsworn Call just like if that was a close matchup before, it's going to be Dragon's favor now because like 1/3 of the games they're just going to have Oathsworn and Shields, and it's going to be insane. So that's that. And then the last card in the deck would be Cyberlord Coral. This is definitely like the worst card in the deck. It's just something I put in on a whim. I was kind of deciding what I wanted my last slot to be after I decided to play the Oathsworn Calls, and I figured why not try this over it. It's kind of occupying the slot that you might see like I guess like a logo scan in. It's sort of filling that role. But I don't know. It's just a little more. Well, I mean, I just wanted to add to my percentage of having Oathsworn Call at least somewhat in shields, and it does that kind of poorly. But again, it's like it's another early game creature as well. So against control, you can play it as a looter to curve into a Keeper of Laws if you need a creature. Like if you're missing the birds, you can just play Coral into Keeper of Laws, and then it lets you start off your progressions early. So then hopefully you can go 5 into a 6 in that matchup. So it gives you another out to doing that. And then against all the aggressive decks, again, I have 11 Shield Blast, which is more than I would say is typical of like a dragon deck. So being able to put some of those down against aggro can be good. I guess another tangent too regarding Coral, like the way the mana system in Kaijudo works, it's super weird because it makes the floor on every single card so much higher than would be like in a traditional game. Like the floor on Cyberlord Coral is really high. Like it's just going to be a water mana. It's going to be an island, which I actively want and I need. So it's going to be like just a good card for that purpose alone. And the fact that like the floor on every single card is high, like even though this is going to be like an underwhelming card, probably not worth the deck slot, right? It's going to be hard to tell that that's the case, like in a lot of the time. Like people tend to play port cards a lot in Kaijudo, and it's just like the fact that the floor is so high on everything, it really disguises the opportunity cost that you're playing in the first place to play a card that's underwhelming, right? Relative to a game like Magic, let's say, like the opportunity cost is just a lot lower for any given card than it would be in Magic, because like let's say in Magic you're playing an underwhelming card or a situational card, you're not in the right situation, you're just going to be down a full resource. But that's just like not the case in Kaijudo because of the mana system. So again, it makes it kind of hard to tell how good cards actually are, and you don't really get punished for playing bad cards as much as maybe you should or you would like to. Yeah, that was just an aside there, I guess. But yeah, this is my dragon deck as it stands. like I said, there's like just a million ways you can build it. Like I've seen, like of course, like if you want to tech it for control, you can probably cut the calls, maybe play, like I said, like Cyber Scamp's a good 2-drop if you want to go that direction. More Keeper of Laws, Rusalka Aqua Chaser. There's a lot of cards that suck against that card, and people love to play cards that suck to Aqua Chaser in Kaijudo, so that's why I always played it. It just awesome card. So there's a bunch of things you can play. Like if you wanted to play more early game, like embrace the tempo side. Like I've seen builds, of course, that kind of cut down on the dragon synergy. They focus more on like just curving out with like Dawnblaze Patrol even as like a 3-drop, maybe Metal Max as a 2-drop, maybe embracing like a full Blinder Beetle Prime engine. That's been done in the past too. You could play tech cards like Reverberate, which I've never really liked. You could play any number of random dragons, like the one that unleashes and untaps, the one that whenever something attacks, I think it's called like Krogon, whenever something attacks, it battles. Like, again, you're not going to get punished that much, so if you want to just throw whatever big dragons, you just throw it in mana half the time anyways. So what else? I think there's Eternal Gaia Dragon has been a card. I think Rob Walensky played that alongside the packages of Oathsworn Call. I just don't think it's worth it. It's not going to matter in enough games. Like, it's free, but again, like, it can be hard to tell, but I think you probably don't want to add like just a random green card in that sense. Like, you have enough hard time. There's enough games where you don't cast a Nyx when you need to, or you don't cast a Herald when you need to, that adding like just a pure nature card seems kind of wrong to me, especially when I'm probably underrating it, but I just feel like it's not going to be relevant in enough games to make it worth that downside. Like, it's just going to be like the control decks all just go over the top. Like, your random big dude that costs you your whole turn to play is not going to do much in the face of like an Andromeda and a Haven anyways. Another card people play a lot is Blaze Helix. I kind of like the idea of it as like basically a Storm Spark Blast that's red, and I've talked about how you want red mana, but I don't know. I've never really liked. Maybe part of me is like I'm biased against it just because I've always thought it was overplayed. Like, I felt like you're just losing all those games where you're trying to, like, if you're trying to rely on Blaze Helix to beat a Haven, you're just gonna lose to the one they play next turn. Like, it's just not super good in my mind. So like teching it against blockers, I've just never found to be super relevant, and I kind of like the Shield Blast on Storm Spark a little better. But it's a fine card. Like, it's a fine card, like I said, but I don't know. I feel like there's awkward scenarios too, like where you want to follow up a Herald with it, but you have to like mana it because you're only. I don't know. Maybe I'm just whatever. I'm just biased against the card, I'll say. But anyways, like I said, there's a billion ways to play it. This is the way I've been playing it recently. So yeah, that's the deck. Anyways, I know I rambled a lot. I love to talk about Kaijudo, of course. So let me know your thoughts on my deck. Maybe your thoughts on Kaijudo in general. What you think of the game. Unfortunately, it is dead, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I know the quality, again, it's not going to be super great. I opted for better audio quality than video quality. So, again, yeah, just let me know what I think. I hope you enjoyed the video. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye.